Oh,
Well, good morning, everyone, and my name is Kerry Brown, and you've just tuned in to Hang Out with Coach Kerry. Every morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, you can catch me here on either YouTube or you're watching me directly from my website, hangoutwithcoachkerry.com. Well, here we are for another episode, and today it's about how to stay on track with your marketing strategies. I suspect if you are a small business owner, a solo entrepreneur, is that you struggle from time to time about keeping consistent, especially if you're the one doing all of the various marketing strategies. In fact, my guess is if I asked my VIP panelists right now if they do struggle staying on track with them sometimes, there would be at least one or two strategies that they have a difficult time staying consistent with. So today what we kind of want to do is unpack that for you. Unpack it so that you can be consistent with all the efforts that you're doing, because you know your number one priority is to create predictable income. And how to create predictable income is by doing things predictably. And so part of that is, how do you get new leads into your door? How do you get them walking into your business? How do you get the email to happen or the phone to ring? Consistently, well, that comes from your consistent efforts as well. So what I'm going to do today is have my VIP panelists introduce themselves so you know who will be asking me the questions. So we're first of all going to start with Bonnie Mitchell. Bonnie, why don't you take yourself off mute and introduce yourself to our audience.
Good morning, Kerry. I'm Bonnie Mitchell, and my company is Mitchell Creative, and I'm a boutique graphic design company. I help businesses all over the world increase their revenue by creating a complete complement of attractive material that helps them market to their target clientele. And I can be found at bonniemitchell.ca.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. And then over to you, Kathy. Tell us about you.
Good morning, Kerry. Thanks for having me on again today. My name is Kathy Scott. I have a boutique travel company, actually, and I do custom tours for women all over the world, extraordinary experiences for women who want something out of the box and not in a big bus setting. And I can be found at nichetravel.ca.
Great, thanks, Kathy. And Grace Gary, tell us about you.
good morning, Kerry. I'm Grace Kerry. My business is Graceful Solutions. I'm a counsellor, and I help people who run into a roadblock in life to get past that so they can reach their goals. I have a special interest in emotional eating, and I have a 4-week course coming up called Control Your Mind, Control Your Weight. And I can be found at gracefulsolutions.ca.
Great, thank you, Grace. And last but not least at all, Mary Lou, tell us about you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Kerry, for having me on. This is my first time. So my name is Mary Lou Newbold, and I'm the co-owner of the Mayfair Optometric Clinic here in Victoria, BC. We're the leading experts in eye care. We offer a full vision experience, starting with comprehensive eye health examinations with our doctors of optometry. We have a full line of designer name frames. We have contact lenses, sunwear, and what sets us apart from everyone else is the level of experience and expertise in our optical staff. All combined, we've got over 100 years.
Great, excellent. And how can they find you online, Mary Lou?
Thank you. We've got our website is www.mayfairoptometric.com. We're very active on Facebook with our Seattle Seahawks podcast. We have a lot of fun with that.
Excellent. That's great. And they won yesterday too. So
they did win. It was a great game.
All right. So if you've been watching my show, you know that recently I've been talking a lot about creating a strategic plan and the differentiation between a business plan and a strategic plan and why that's a really key piece. And part of a strategic plan for most businesses will be some strategies they're going to use with respect to their marketing for either this next quarter, the next 6 months, or the next year. And so we're going to talk about marketing. We may end up talking about marketing over the next number of episodes because consistently, in a session after session with the clients that I deal with on a one-on-one basis or any of my group coaching programs, is we talk about marketing. Because it's that elusive piece. You know, what do you do? What activities do you do to generate the results that you do? And for a lot of times, people are looking for a sure thing. And we all know that there's rarely any sure things, especially because every business is going to be unique. Every strategy is going to be unique to them. Some will work for some businesses and some will work for others. And even on the 4 panelists that we have today, a marketing strategy that might work for a Mayfair optometric clinic might not work for Mitchell Creative, or something that might work for Grace Kerry Counselor may work really well for Kathy and Niche Travel. So, you know, again, it's a very unique, specific thing to every business. But today what we want to focus on is consistency, whatever that happens to be. And the first thing is that you want to be really clear what are going to be your strategies that you're going to employ. And that's a really, really key piece. That comes out of creating your strategic plan. So you want to identify what they are. And you want to have at least, when you have your business up and running and it's really running smoothly, you can have at any given time 10 different marketing strategies in place. That's 10 whole marketing strategies in place. Now, do you start with 10? You don't. You start with 1, and then you move from there. So let's, I'm going to open up to my panelists now, and how about if we start in the order that we did our introductions. So Bonnie, I'm going to ask you to ask me your question first, and really what I want to do is ask have you ask me those questions that you would want to ask someone like me as your business coach that could be really helpful for those people who are either watching this live or listening to this as a recording or as a podcast. So Bonnie, when it comes to marketing, being consistent with marketing strategies, what's one question, or maybe the first question to get this episode going, that you might ask me?
Well, it's probably a pretty basic question, Kerry. So I've got a certain amount of marketing strategies on the go already, and I've been very good at being consistent with those. And now I'm at the point where I'm ready to add a couple more, and I'm having a hard time executing it. So I'm looking at this, I've got the ideas, but it's the execution I'm having a really difficult time with. It just seems to be time.
Right, okay. So that can be a couple of things, and I think this is probably a question that would resonate with a lot of our listeners, so thank you so much for asking me that question, is that I think a lot of time lack of execution has to do with some level of either confusion or unclear first steps. That really, if you think about anything in life, is that when we're really clear what the next first steps are, and we know that we can do them, or at least we've got the materials, we have the expertise, whatever that happens to be, we can take them. So if we're unclear about those first pieces, we will hesitate. We will procrastinate on that. Sometimes it isn't just that we don't know what they are, but sometimes we don't have the right skill or ability to be able to do that. And I know even in my business that there are definitely things that when it comes to technology might be a piece that holds me back. So I have a great idea and I don't take action on it. And so when I unpack that, I learn it's because I don't know a certain piece that's in there. So it's either you're unclear or you don't have the knowledge or the skill level to be able to do it. And it's really one of those two things. Possibly it could be is that you're really not convinced that it's a great strategy in the first place, or that's either from a financial commitment or a time commitment. That you're just not ready to make that financial commitment to it, even though you might have heard it's a good idea. And this happens a lot with social media strategies, as people hear that you really should be doing something and they're really not committed to it. So when you're not really committed to it, then you're going to have some hesitation. Having said that, I really do think it's the first two in most cases, especially Bonnie, if you're already really clear on what those strategies are, you've kind of laid out that you really want to implement them and what it is, because I think that when we're clear on the next steps and we have the skill and ability to be able to do it, or at least hire that out, time really isn't the issue. I think time can often be something that we use as an excuse for something, and I'm not saying you do, but sometimes it can be an excuse because we're putting this particular new strategy at a lower priority than something else. Now, having said that, we only have a certain number of hours in a day. So you may then have to go and have a look at maybe some of my time management strategies that allow you to be more efficient with certain things you're doing, take less time with certain things. Maybe it's time to delegate some of those lower level activities that you no longer need to be doing specifically, and then you can hire somebody else to do them. So Bonnie, I hope that answered your question for you and gave you at least something to ponder and think about, maybe what your hesitation might be. Was that helpful?
That was very helpful, Kerry. Thank you. Definitely gives me some things to ponder.
Good. Excellent. Okay, Kathy, on to you for your question for me this morning.
Okay, Kerry. So what I was wondering about was, when you're talking about at any one given time having up to 10 different strategies going for your marketing, how long would you give one strategy before you decided it's maybe not the right fit?
That is a really great question. And my answer to that is not going to be black and white, unfortunately, because in business there's rarely any black and whites. So it really depends on what the strategy is. So, for example, if you decide that a strategy is going to be for you to build your business, or at least one of your new strategies, through a relationship marketing strategy, which might be attending a certain networking event or a new organization that you haven't previously gone to, or at least maybe not engaged to the level that you want to now. Well, we all know that when it comes to building relationships and building what I call that know, like, and trust factor, that KLT factor, that takes a long time. It takes a long time to nurture those relationships. Absolutely, you can speed up the process by being a connector for people, by showing up, by volunteering, by doing all of those kinds of things. But it will take time, especially if people have pre-existing relationships with someone else in your industry. It's going to take time to convert them over. And then, of course, it depends on what your particular product or service is, how often they're purchasing that. So what are the odds that on a fairly consistent basis they're going to be needing your service, or what you offer is something that's a longer sell time, a longer time between the purchases. So that's certainly one of the factors that you want to take into consideration. If you're using media, for an example, using some kind of media, so you may be using advertising, for example, then that can be a shorter time frame. First of all, it's very costly, so unless you have an unlimited budget, you really have to put a very short timeline on that. Having said that, if it's if you do one shot, it's never going to be quite enough. So I would say with most of those kinds of campaigns, what you want to do is really flesh out what your expected ROI is for that particular campaign. And what I mean by ROI is your return on investment. How much money am I willing to invest for this minimum return over this period of time? And then, of course, with all of your strategies, you have to track that. And especially track those ones that are costing you, your hard-earned dollars. Yes, it's also taking your time, so there's those two resources I always talk about, your time and your money, so you want to be tracking that. So if you're doing something where there's that money component to it, and you're concentrating it, then you can put that shorter period of time on it. So Kathy, what it really means is looking at each and every one of the campaigns that you have and saying to yourself, how long for this one, given my time and energy, am I willing to invest in this to see it through, to see whether it actually gets the results? Or do I need to do some tweaking along the way? Be really, really careful. I'm going to encourage all of you from jumping from one to the other. This shiny thing, then this shiny thing, and this shiny thing. Especially with a lot of strategies, they require that constant imprinting, keeping you top of mind. So you really need to think about that in the long term. So I'm always really hesitant for people to spend a lot of their time and money on strategies where they don't have the budget to be able to do it for a long enough period of time to be able to see whether it actually is getting some traction. So Kathy, again, that wasn't a straight black and white answer. There was a lot of gray in there, but some things to think about when it comes to your strategies. Did I answer that question for you?
Absolutely, thanks. That was great, Kerry.
Okay, good. So Grace, on to you for your question for me.
Well, my question is about how to set it up to happen consistently. I use networking, writing articles, and giving talks as three main ways that I connect with people. And I find if someone asks me to do something, I'll do it. But I'm not great at creating those opportunities in terms of finding places to put articles or finding places where I can give talks. So to do it more consistently. So any ideas on that would be helpful.
Great. Okay. So again, boy, great questions this morning. So one of the key things is when you look at one of those strategies, so let's say it's speaking opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Grace, I'm going to just have you put you on mute while I'm just talking, just for the sound quality in the background. If you could do that, that would be great. So one of the first things to do is when you're looking at a strategy is to really flush it out. So for an example, if one of your strategies is for speaking, then you want to take a look at what are the opportunities that are out there. How many are there? Where are the places that you can reach out to? How often do you want to speak? What's your ideal? What's your minimum number? And then identify all the various strategic alliances you might have that might give you opportunities, or joint venture partners who might give you opportunities. So you're going to flush this out, kind of like what I'm going to call a campaign. So you know all of the components that are in it. And then the next piece, so that's the strategy, then the tactics are going to be, how are you actually going to go and reach those people? So for an example, if you listed 10 different organizations that might have opportunities for you to be able to speak, then are you going to send them letters? Are you going to send them emails? How often are you going to contact them? So you're going to plan that out. And then, of course, you're going to schedule that connection with them. So if you've sent an email in the month of January, are you going to be following up with them and sending them something else in April for them to consider? You might want to give them ideas. So every single marketing strategy has to be planned out like a campaign. Plan it as if you're spending a lot of money at it and you want to flush all of those components out of it. Unfortunately, often what happens, and Grace, I'm not saying that this may be for you, but this may resonate with some of the listeners today, is that you say an idea, oh, here's going to be a marketing strategy and here's what I would like to do, and that's really the end of it. And you haven't really flushed out all of those components of the strategy. You haven't really flushed out, okay, how am I actually going to go and get those? What are the activities that I need to do, and how consistent do I need to do them in order to get the results that I want to get from it? And then you want to track those results. So if you've done the activities, track those results. Do some more activity, track those results. Then you're going to do what you've heard me say if you've been a fan of my shows for a long time, something called evaluate and adjust. So every single time what you're going to do is you're going to evaluate the activities and you're going to make some little adjustments. Now again, I caution you on that shiny thing syndrome about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But I do think you do need to stop and say, okay, is there something I need to do? Do I need to increase my engagement? Do I need to send them something else? Do I need to send them, for example, for you, Grace, do I need to send them ideas of what you could speak on? You know, rather than just reaching out to them and say, I'd like to be able to speak for your organization, is maybe send them some ideas, or send them some timely ideas that might fit where their organization might be at that particular moment in time. You know, make their life easy for them, and especially when it comes to looking for speaking engagements. And chances are that will increase your opportunities for you to be able to speak to organizations. So Grace, did that give you some ideas about how to flush out a campaign so that it's a lot clearer, all the components of it?
Yes, it did, Kerry. Certainly fleshing it out and being really engaged in it, it makes a lot of sense.
Great, excellent. And then, of course, you know, one of the key components of it is you've got to actually schedule all of those activities in to make sure that, you know, if once a month you're sending something out to a particular organization, if you've determined that that's enough activity in order to generate what you want, then that has to go into your calendar and become a must-do during that month. All right, Mary Lou, on to you for a question for me today.
Well, you actually just kind of touched on it there, Kerry, in that last sentence when you're talking about you hit the word schedule. I find that time management, of course, is an issue that always everything leads back to time management, doesn't it? So my question is, it's kind of a twofold. One is when you're doing this strategizing and planning, I find that you need space to get that creative thought process going. And is that a one day? Is it drive off into the wilderness and sit and ponder? Is it notebooks scattered around? And I know everybody thinks differently. And then when you've sort of kind of got that strategy in a big sense picture, is it an annual time management? Is it quarterly? Is it what's the best way to make this effective so that you're not trying to eat the whole pie at once?
That's a great question. And really what we're talking about are the components of putting together your marketing plan and then fleshing out the strategies and tactics as a result of that. So great question. And it really will depend on how much time you need on a couple of things. One of them is the number of strategies you want to flesh out. So if it's just one new strategy, then you're not going to need as much time as if you want 3 or 4 new ones. So for each particular one, you are going to need to take some time to flesh it out. Absolutely, no question about that. And how you think and how you work is very different. Can be different, as you already mentioned. So for some people, yes, it is. It's going off into the wilderness and doing something on their own. For a lot of people, though, it's very difficult to be creative on your own in isolation. So it requires either the brainstorming. It requires to be part in kind of a mastermind component of it. It requires often, I work with my clients on that, and I help them flush out those ideas. And because part of it also is you have to do some analysis. So if you decide you're going to implement a new particular strategy, then you want to take a look at, okay, well, you know, maybe you might have to look at doing a SWOT analysis. And for those of you who wonder what a SWOT analysis is, we did touch on it in one of our previous episodes, but it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and I actually like to add an extra T, which is trends, any trends. So for an example, if it was going to be for you, it might be a TV campaign or something like that you might do. So what you really want to do is stop and say, okay, what are your strengths in this for that particular strategy? What are your weaknesses around that? What are your opportunities that are there that you see? Why would that particular strategy, where would there be opportunity in that for you? Would there be any threats in that? Are there other people that are doing it, that maybe there's some competition in there? And are there any trends? Is that a particular strategy that's trending towards it? Or in your industry you see a trend that you could capitalize that in that strategy. So that's an example of the kind of flushing out that you're going to want to do, depending upon how complex that particular campaign is as well. If it's a campaign to increase a social media engagement, for example, then that may take some time looking at what other people are doing. To help you build your content calendar. You know, that would be something that you might say, okay, over the next year for social media, I'm actually going to flush out what my content is going to be. And you want to ask yourself, am I able to do that on my own, or do I need someone else to be able to do that? Do I need that brainstorming idea to think of things? Can I put some framework around certain particular times of the year? So for you, for an example, you know, going into summer months, obviously sunglasses, and you know, there could be some certain things. I mean, you may look at your industry and say there's certain things during the year that might drive certain things. You might even say, you know, who was wearing glasses at the Oscars and the trends in that around Oscar time. You know, so looking at topical pieces and putting that content calendar in place. So that's going to take a fair bit of time to flesh out. Well, you can put the parameters around it, but then to flesh out if every week you're going to be talking about a particular topic, or you know there's going to be a particular promotion and you want to build up towards that. So 6 weeks prior to that, you're going to put that in place. Well, you can see by even just what I've said so far, it's going to take time to be able to flush that out. So again, no black or white answer. A fair bit of gray in here, which is you want to look at each particular campaign that you have. Each one of those is going to take a different amount of time. Consider how best you work. I know for me, I work best in kind of collaborative, creative environment versus working on my own. If I have to work on my own, then I have to have something that stimulated me. I have to be, you know, reading material that gets my creative juices going. I have to listen to you know, someone else's show. In fact, the reason I do these episodes is to inspire people to work on parts of their business that they might not be working on, working off their kitchen table or in their bedroom or in a private office somewhere, because it can become pretty isolating. So take into consideration how you work as well, and then combine that together. It's really critical that you can look at all of those pieces, and then that'll be able to answer your question for you. Did that answer that for you, Mary Lou? I know I probably add a little bit more than maybe what you were thinking I might, but did that answer the question for you?
It actually did. Thanks, Kerry. I think the SWOT analysis is probably the biggest tip I got out of your gray, no black and white. I really think that's a really good tip to throw against a strategy, to rule it out or to make a quick decision on whether or not to continue on. So thank you.
Great, excellent, good. So what I'd like to do now is just open it up to anyone here. If anyone else has another question for me, I'm happy to answer it. And failing that, if you don't, then the next thing is I'd like to hear from each of you. You know, what is sort of one key thing you're taking away from today? And it may not even have related to the question that you asked me. It may have been somebody else's, or maybe it actually sparked something in you. So who would like to go first and share with me their aha or just one other quick question?
I'm happy to go, Kerry.
Okay, great.
Okay. What I would say is, you know, I tend to sometimes be that squirrel person. You know, I can get the shiny thing object going on. So I think what I've taken away is really to sit down and go over each and every one of my marketing strategies and take another look at them and get a little bit more focused on moving forward with them.
Great, excellent. Thank you. Good. Who's next?
I'll go next, Kerry.
Yes.
I was thinking that it would make sense for me to come up with 3 juicy titles for talks I could give, prepare the talks, and then get out there. And I think part of it is I hold back and I don't begin that process. So if I had the talks all ready to go, it would be easier to market them. So
and I'm even going to, I'm even going to challenge you is to create the 3 juicy topics, go out and market them, and then the first one that somebody bites on, then you create it for them. Remember, my philosophy isn't just because you build it, they will come. Get them to come, and then you can be building it while they're coming. So that's my challenge for you, Grace.
Yes, touche.
Who's next?
I'm happy to go next, Kerry.
Okay, Bonnie.
So being a creative person, it's always easy for me to come up with ideas and look at things and that. But I think what really hit home was, I was making notes here during this episode, what really hit home for me was fleshing out the details better. So while I have all these ideas and that, and I can kind of see where they go, I am missing those intermediate steps on how to get to that final piece. So I think I need to slow down a bit and focus on those details a bit more.
Great. And, you know, Bonnie, all I would encourage you is that, you know, it's unlikely with anything that you'll ever know every single last step, because things will happen as you evaluate and adjust. And so if taking action it is because you don't feel you flushed all of them out, don't worry about that in terms of the actual, you know, little pieces along the way. Know at least the next few action steps. Yes, you have to flush out the tactics, but in terms of action steps, you know, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. So I just encourage you to take action on those. So thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Thank you. Very good advice.
And Mary Lou.
Yes, I was hiding here going last. I, too, was taking a few notes here this morning, and I think what struck me was I don't measure enough of the response of what we do. We do some radio, we do some TV and social media. I try to be quite active. So, but it's easy as people are coming through our door to just simply be asking them yes or no. You know, hey, do you mind? Have you heard us on the radio? Yes or no. Have you visited our Facebook page? Yes or no. And I think doing that over a period of a few weeks would at least give me some indication as which way to focus. So the reminder of tracking things probably was the most valuable tip for me today. Thank you. Great.
Excellent. That's great. So just a reminder for everybody, you can go and watch past episodes at hangoutwithcoachkerry.com. Kerry is spelled Kerry. Also on there is my my free ebook that I would love to have you. It's my gift to you, called How to Get Out of Overwhelm and Accelerate Your Results. So please do go to my website, interact there. My blog is there as well, and it's a great place for resources and tips and strategies. So again, thank you so much to all my panelists. I really appreciate your time today and your challenging questions for me. And I look forward to having you all tune in next week, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Bye-bye, everybody.